Welcome to Unreal Foundations Blueprints Part 2. In this chapter, we are going to go over object-oriented programming concepts. We'll talk about blueprint communication. We'll use casting, event dispatchers, blueprint interfaces, introduce child blueprints. We'll start building up useful tools. We'll also take useful tools and modify them. And then we're going to also talk about blueprint states, using mechanics, and components. And finally, I just want to introduce the efficiency concept of design patterns. Now, we're not going to do this. This is sort of a high-level concept. But the idea is that blueprints themselves are moderately efficient, but as you learn more and more coding, you could potentially optimize both your blueprint knowledge as well as even go into and build additional resources. All right, so let's quickly introduce some cross-blueprint communication examples and talk about the different sections we're going to go over this week. So we're going to go over the content examples. We'll talk about actor blueprints and event listeners. We're going to build up a reusable actor blueprint. And this is where it's really going to start getting powerful. So I'm really excited about this. We can reuse a lot of these content in different ways. We'll talk about object versus class, and we'll use this within an example where we're spawning different objects, and we'll set a game mode. We'll be taking some of the information we had from way back when we were talking about materials, and we'll start animating material instance with blueprints. We're going to build a door and a key example where we can have multiple doors that have specific keys that only work with them. And it's a really great example that illustrates the power and use for cross-blueprint communications, and it can also connect to a future tutorial where we build an interface around this. Okay, we're going to go in and track points inside the character blueprint and modify the character's movement. And then we're going to also build out the physics handle. And we're going to illustrate one of the core concepts that I think is really important in Unreal using a trace. And we're also going to modify the basic standard physics handle so we can do other things with it. And finally, I'm going to give a few extra bonus resources for things that I would have loved to add for this chapter, but we only have so much time. Additional notes for game mode, savings, network, and collaboration resources. And then also I built out a whole bonus tutorials that I'll send links to for spline blueprints, which are really useful. Before we jump in, I want to quickly mention blueprint-specific resources. We mentioned these in the last set of tutorials, but there's additional courses out there. There's the content examples, which we're going to go over a couple of them. And then finally, forums. I just wanted to quickly mention the forums. Now, as you get into deeper blueprint coding areas, the forums can be really useful, but I just want to say that it's really good to first check out to see if somebody's asked the same question you have and try to Google it in a couple different ways. There's a sort of etiquette towards using the forums. And as you get from beginner to intermediate, chances are both beginner and intermediate folks have thought up a lot of the same questions you have, which is awesome because that means that you're going to get to the answers a lot faster. But then if you come up with additional questions or find problems that other people haven't, then that's great too. Finally, remember to give back. You can check to see if you can give some of the answers because that helps you learn as well. It's partly why I'm doing these tutorials, is it locks in information and then I pass it on to my students. All right, great. So Unreal documentation, quick start guides, and content examples. In the last set of tutorials, I mentioned we went over some of the blueprints overview, but in this chapter, we're going to go from right to left. We're going to go over some of the blueprints advanced concepts. And now I don't expect you guys to completely deeply learn these yet. The way learning works, it's a multi-pass system where you're introduced to knowledge. Then if you apply it and use it and struggle with it for a while, it deeply sinks in. So as long as you know in the beginning that these concepts exist and you start to apply them, you're just going to have that much more power. I'll introduce blueprint splines, and I'll have the bonus tutorials that I built. And then we are going to do a lot with cross-blueprint communication in this chapter. So I'm just going to introduce the content area example. And then As a reminder, we are going to be having a chapter on UMG with different interfaces, and cross-blueprint communication is critical for that. So before we sign off, let's quickly talk about elements of object-oriented programming. I have a link to the Unreal terminology inside here, and we can visually see with this mind map the way objects, they're on top of the hierarchy, then there's classes, and you can see all of these other different classes, right? We've used so many actors. Components, we introduced a rotating component in the last chapter. Also, we've introduced and used brushes. In this chapter, we're going to use game modes. And the key thing that we started to maybe learn a little bit about is this idea of inheritance, that some of these subclasses can inherit different properties from the parent class. And that's going to be a kind of a core concept that we'll be using over and over again in this chapter. Encapsulation is a core object-oriented concept in that some of the information you want to keep within the class itself and you don't let outside of the class. However, there's this other concept called polymorphism where you can take these core tools that you've built and then populate them over and over in different ways, which transforms the object while giving it multi-uses. Okay, wonderful. So I put in a link to this, and then just remember that all these arrows are sublinks to the Unreal documents. Okay, great. We've gone and overviewed what we're going to cover for this chapter. Now let's jump in and get started.